get ready to do this interview, that's why. How you doing? You good? Alright. What's your name?
My name is Gwen.
Gwen? Okay. Sometimes you don't be bothered.
It's a professional team.
You doing okay?
Until
Yeah. You need to work.
the evening of November 2nd.
Where you going?
No.
Oh, don't spit all over the place now. Alright, Gwen, I appreciate it.
It's my name. It's nice of you. All right. Well, you're a popular guy.
I guess so.
Yeah. And so you seem to know people on the bus. The first question is just, as a 34-year-old nonprofit executive running for mayor, what's your routine on the bus, on public transit? How often do you use it?
Well, I've officially went carless, so that's going to increase my frequency. I'm riding the bus, like all throughout grad school. I took the health line to school quite often, and now I take the health line once every other week if I can. But I'm a big believer in creating a city where you have active bus, a great rail system, and also other multimodal transit solutions to support our residents and folks coming into the city to live, work, and play. So it's so important.
Okay, well, I'll get to a couple of questions about that in a bit, and that sort of thing. And you're aware that there's been this next-gen system instituted, which has made some improvements in services and frequency and scheduled connections, but it also comes with some compromises in delivering service and that sort of thing. Choices have to be made. So in your idea, what would be some of the next steps you would want to see taken as you were mayor? What would you advocate for?
Well, I want to do a couple things. Number one, I intend to make sure that Cleveland is one of the cities across the state that's a part of the Ohio Mayor's Alliance, and I want to put together a coalition to better advocate our governor and our state legislature for more investments in public transit in cities like Cleveland across the state, because we see so many of our tax dollars being spent on highways in rural parts of the state, but we aren't investing in Ohio cities. And we know that Ohio cities make up the majority of the state's GDP.
Right.
So the economic competitiveness of our state runs through Cleveland, runs through Columbus, runs through Cincy, runs through Dayton. And so we got to get our fair share. Secondly, we should be exploring with Indian Birdsong, our Chamber of Commerce,
and other key stakeholders, additional revenue sources to invest in public transit. As you know, I was on the board of RTA for nearly 3 years, and one of the biggest pain points we had was in doing the next-gen route redesign with limited resources. How do we maximize service, right? And I thought we did the best we could, given the counsel we got from Jared Walker. But if we can find additional revenue sources to, invest in public transit, then we can expand on what we did with Jared Walker and increase frequency across the city and the county.
Now, before in your answer, you talked about working with Cincinnati, Columbus, Toledo, Dayton, what have you, and stuff. But public transit, it isn't necessarily an urban-rural issue, is it? I mean, in your mind, because
well, I think no. But I'll say this: is that for far too long, the state legislature hasn't given cities like Cleveland their fair share of public transit dollars. That's all.
So that would be, and maybe it wouldn't be public transit dollars, it would be using other funding for roads, highways, bridges, and stuff, more equitably distributed. Is that correct? Okay.
No, what I'm saying is we're really quick at ODOT to keep investing in highways, but we've done a terrible job in the state in investing in public transit in Ohio's major cities. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So ODOT needs to also change its priorities. Yeah. And I understand that ODOT has a 2025 program. That might be something too that you would look into. Okay. You mentioned earlier multimodal.
Yep.
Yeah. So what's your vision? What's your ideas about increasing multimodal? We mean walking, bicycle, scooters, even rideshare systems, whatever it might be, to create trails.
We talked about this earlier before we got on the bus.
One thing I want to do as mayor is create an integrated office and Department of Mobility and Transit in inside my administration that'll work with the county, NOACA, and other key stakeholders across this region to make sure we're making the right transit-oriented development investments, to make sure we have the right, from a planning perspective, the right mobility policies in place to encourage that kind of investment. And then thirdly, how are we enticing more bike sharing programs and car sharing programs in the core of our city.
Okay. Now, when we talk about mobility too, you've probably heard of mobility as a service, which is more of a tech orientation to trying to solve that problem. Do you think that that fits into the equation here?
I think so. I think all of those options should be on the table, and it's going to be important that RTA can be a key partner. How we can integrate that into a comprehensive kind of platform for the city and the county long term.
Yeah, and for folks who are tuning in now, for mobility as a service, we're talking about the fact of using digital technology to be able to schedule a one-stop app.
Yeah, and I think that that's really the long-term vision of RTA, right? Creating kind of an integrated platform where you can embed maybe ride sharing or bike share into an app that RTA has. I mean, that should be the long-term vision of RTA, and that's something I would encourage as mayor on behalf of that agency.
Earlier today, at the committee meeting, GCRTA's chief of police here, Jones, introduced two proposals. One proposal and one a pilot program. The proposal for civilian oversight board, and also a pilot program for safety ambassadors. And you were on the board when the Leasing Ambassadors program was raised, particularly by Clevelanders for Public Transit. Okay, have you had the opportunity to see what she's introduced?
I just saw the article today on Cleveland.com. I haven't yet to see the full presentation, but as you know, when I was on the board of RTA, that was something I highly encouraged our board and leadership to consider, as well as I wanted to make sure we fought to have a civilian oversight board for transit police complaints inside the department as well. So I think those are two positive steps in the right direction for the agency.
Okay, and I do have both proposals here.
Oh, good. That'd be great.
Okay. Now the other thing too is like it is being funded, through available funding right now, and the Transit Ambassadors program would also need some grant funding. So, what about the future of funding for transit? We're creating programs which has an organization wants to apparently develop, but also has limited resources to begin with.
Well, I talked about seeing if we could increase our share of state resources that we're getting as one option. The second option should be, the next mayor will start to explore aggressively with India Birdsong, GCP, and CP, includes public transit as well. Are there some additional revenue sources we can look at, whether it be a levy? I think that needs to be on the table. I had a sneeze, 1 second. Sorry. Thirdly, I would say we got to upgrade our our parking meters. We're smart parking. We're losing so much money right now because we're not optimizing that revenue, particularly as folks start to come back and live, work, and play downtown. I think if we could, finally get smart parking meters in Cleveland and maximize that revenue potential, that could be another additional revenue source potentially to better invest in public transit.
So you would take a cut of the revenue and put it in the public transit. Okay. Now, we mentioned transit ambassadors, and part of CPT's advocacy was that it didn't feel it was appropriate to have uniformed armed police officers doing that work and that sort of thing. Coupled with that is the whole idea of decriminalization of fare evasion, which is what the officers were involved with, was policing the possible fare evasion. Currently, it's still a $250 fine and a possible jail term. By decriminalizing, it would basically be a parking ticket. So, what would that actually could be in your wheelhouse, or at least you and City Council's wheelhouse?
Yeah. Well, I just talked to Councilman Kerry McCormick about this. I believe draft legislation is written, and Council is examining that legislation as we speak, I believe. And as mayor, I would support Kerry McCormick's legislation to decriminalize fare evasion in the city of Cleveland.
Okay.
As long as, in addition to decriminalizing jaywalking and other offenses like that don't get people caught up in the criminal justice system that don't deserve it.
And just so you know,
And we should support the Judge Crow's decision as well.
Judge Crow's
Absolutely.
and Judge Crow's description was the unconstitutional aspects of fair enforcement. And just so you know, is that the legislation that Councilman McCormick has put forward was accomplished through conversations with leading Republicans.
Fantastic.
So we're already aware of it. It looks pretty good to us,
Yeah.
but hopefully the City Council will do the same. The board, you served on the board
For nearly 3 years.
right?
Yeah.
And CPT has always advocated that we need to have people on the board who understand the writer experience, and they're primarily for writers, themselves, and that's to be able to serve on the board. And you know that the board members come from a variety of different backgrounds and have a variety of different expertise that they bring to the table. Where does being a writer fall into that mix?
Top factor for me in terms of who I'm going to appoint to the board of RTA.
The mayor gets 4 appointments to the board of RTA. I want to prioritize having a writer on that board. I want to prioritize having someone that is from our disabled community on the board. And also I want to prioritize folks that share my commitment on social justice, equity, and really moving this agency into the 21st century.
And that currently exists, so if you were elected mayor and you have 4 appointments, would that be something that you would look at right away, or would you look and see how the current appointees are doing?
I would evaluate the current appointments and then make my own decision.
Okay. And how would you recruit the new appointees?
I would talk to organizations like yours as a starting point.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going through Ohio City right now, West 25th Street, which that's gone from department stores to various kinds of restaurants and that sort of thing, and new housing going up right around the corner of Intro. And Cleveland's seen a significant investment in neighborhood redevelopment like this here in Ohio City or in Euclid Corridor, University, and elsewhere. In fact, there's a Paulus Timber building in the United States going up right there. It will be until someone builds one next year. But transit-oriented development is what they're calling it, and understood what it is. But actually, if you look at the Metro's promotional information that they have about moving into this new place, whether you're a business or a resident, their championing of public transit tends to be stronger than what we hear from the business community in town or the city of Cleveland, in the sense of that this is one reason to move here and stuff like that. Working with these entities that are developing the city, your planning office or whatever, how would your administration and the city champion public transit?
It's going to be a linchpin.
And a major factor is in what projects we prioritize and support in the city. I think sector development is the future, particularly as we're trying to incite more companies to locate in Cleveland and have jobs where not only can they walk to, but a job they can get to within 15 minutes. So all of that needs to be cohesive.
How about in neighborhoods that aren't necessarily booming?
Particularly on the east side of the city. That's a big problem. And I've said this throughout this campaign for far too long. We've had
This is our start.
Yep.
for far too long we've had a one-size-fits-all approach economic development. So what's going to work in Ohio City right here on this street on West 25th is going to be very different than what we need to do on 121st and Dove. Right. And our Office of Economic and Community Development must be just a way to, handle that nuance.
Okay. Excuse me. Yay. Is with this new development going on here, and the Voss building is going to be redeveloped. And there's also new apartments elsewhere. One of the suggestions, whether or not it could be done or not, is for this West 25th Street station, given that it's 55, well, it's almost 70 years old.
I think the developers of the intro want that to happen too.
Yeah. Well, what I suggested to that GCRTA was creating a second entrance. It would be an engineering issue, but but from my experience, it was easy to get on the ground floor with developers when you had transit ideas. Working on a planning board in Maryland.
Yeah.
If we brought it up at first, then they could work it into their plan.
Yeah. Versus doing it the opposite when the plan's already done.
Right.
And just trying to fit it in.
So,
Yeah.
what about you'd also have a planning commission that would support, that would report, I should say, to your office. What about that in the sense of prioritizing transit and making sure that it's a portion of the?
I think I said it before, but you need to make sure TOT are key part of the framework of how we prioritize it all the time.
Coming down here, I was on the number 22 bus, and as I was getting off the bus, I mentioned to the driver that we're interviewing candidates for mayor today. What would you say that GCRT needs as a driver? And he said simply two words: more funding. Yeah. So, what would you say to the drivers, and the operators, the people who have to make this work?
We got to be more aggressive about, investing in public transportation in the city. It's not just a throwaway. It's essential. You can't. Every city that I know that's thriving and competitive has really good public transit. Right? And it's the backbone. They'll have a decent day.
Now it's a county-wide system. Yeah. So then you also have colleagues.
You got to work with the suburban mayors too.
Right.
Alaska.
So
and the county executive. Yeah.
Some of them may think that transit is that's something in Cleveland. So how do you get?
Look, a lot of our employers in the county, outside of the city, their workers rely on transportation to their jobs.
Right.
So all of our destinies are interconnected.